We're back. Welcome to the Unofficial Pre Fight Show. This weekend, Marlon Vera versus Rob Font. Let's go. In the main event this weekend, we have two top 10 bantamweights facing off when Rob Font takes on Marlon Vera. Rob Font's looking to get back in the win column after his loss to Jose Aldo in December. And Vera is looking to make it 3 wins in a row with a victory this weekend and keep that win streak going. This is a very close fight in my opinion, and very slight differences and advantages that each fighter is going to have. Looking at Rob Font, I think he has the advantage in the boxing. Marlon Vera, though, does have more versatility in his striking. I think he's got more in his toolbox when it comes to throwing strikes. He's got great kicks, knees, elbows, and decent boxing as well. I would give the grappling advantage to Marlon Vera. I think his submission game is a little better, and just overall, I think he's a bit of a superior grappler over Font. But this is all going to come down to who can implement their game plan best. And the path to victory for Rob Font, I think, is to keep this fight at boxing range. Stay in range, use your footwork, and consistently land your punches, and ensure you don't fight at a distance where Vera can execute his kicks and avoid the takedown. For Vera, on the other hand, it's going to be to fight at range, execute your kicks, leverage that calf kick, take away the movement and power of Rob Font when he's trying to execute his boxing. He also kind of has that grappling in his back pocket. Not sure how often Vera is going to try for takedowns in this bout. He generally likes to stand and kind of trade, but we'll see. Rob Font's also got decent takedown defense, so I'm not sure how consistently Vera will be able to take him down either. This is a pick'em fight for me. I think a case can be made for either guy to get the victory. I am going to go with Rob Font, though. I think he's just able to land the power shots. I think he's able to use his footwork, use his movement, stay in that boxing range, and land more consistently, and ultimately outbox Vera for the victory. But this is a pick'em fight. Going to go with Rob Font, but could definitely go either way. In the co-main event this weekend, we have a heavyweight bout between Jake Collier and Arlovski, two MMA veterans who have been around for a long time. Arlovski, of course, won the UFC heavyweight title back in 2005. Amazing that after 17 years after winning that heavyweight title, he's still competing at the highest level. Guy's 43 years old, and you know what? He's still putting W's up on the board. He's on a 3-fight win streak. Jake Collier, on the other hand, actually started his MMA career as a middleweight, then ballooned up to heavyweight. He fought in the UFC, was released, and then made a return to the UFC as a heavyweight a couple of years ago. I think it was back in 2020. And I got to be honest with Jake Collier, I haven't been impressed with the guy. Everybody he's fought and beat in the UFC thus far has since been released by the organization. Chase Sherman would be the one example of a guy that he's beat since making his return to the UFC, who technically did get cut and then got called back for a last-minute fight, which actually just happens to be on this card as well on the prelims. But I don't think Jake Collier belongs in the UFC, and because of that, I'm going to go with Arlovski in this fight. I think his experience, his footwork, his movement, his overall fight IQ is going to give him the win this weekend. And although the guy's 43 years old, as mentioned, he's still getting wins. Seems to still be able to hang with some of the best out there. So Arlovski is the pick. And I wouldn't be surprised if Jake Collier actually gets released by the UFC after this fight if he loses. Next up, we have two featherweights facing off when Andre Touchy-Feely takes on Joe Anderson. Burrito, you might remember, competed on Dana White's Contender Series last year where he won and earned a UFC contract. He did officially make his UFC debut earlier this year, but came up short, so he's looking to get his first official UFC win this weekend. But he's got a tough task and a real veteran to try and do that with when he takes on Feely. Andre Feely's fought in the UFC 17 times. He's a really well-rounded fighter. He's fought some of the best featherweights in the division. And, looking at Burrito, he's an explosive, aggressive fighter. Throws a lot of power shots, has got pretty legitimate grappling and jiu-jitsu as well. And he starts fights off very aggressive, but he seems to fade as the fight goes on and seems to have some cardio issues. The only chance I see Burrito having in this fight is if he catches Feely with either a power shot or maybe a sneaky submission early on in the fight. Other than that, I don't really see many paths to victory for him. Fili has only been finished a handful of times in his career, and I just don't think Burrito's the guy to get that finish win. So I'm going to go with Fili. I think he's just a much more well-rounded fighter, has got much more experience at fighting at the highest level, having 17 fights in the UFC. Fili is the pick. Next up, we have two lightweight prospects facing off when Jared Gordon takes on Grant Dawson. Both of these guys got a ton of potential and are slowly kind of climbing up the ranks of that lightweight division. Jared Gordon is on a 3-fight win streak right now. Grant Dawson is yet to be beat within his UFC career. Both very well-rounded fighters, exceptional grappling ability. I would give a slight edge in the grappling to Grant Dawson. He's got 11 submission career wins. He's pretty much out-grappled everybody he's fought to date in the UFC. And, seems to be a little better everywhere than Jared Gordon. He comes into this fight as a -145 favorite, and I got to agree with that. I think he is overall a better fighter. Although Jared Gordon, I would not be surprised if he pulled out the upset win. This guy's a capable fighter and is a problem for a lot of guys at lightweight. But I am going to go with Grant Dawson. I think he gets the win this weekend and continues that undefeated UFC career, keeps it alive. But don't sleep on Jared Gordon. I do think he's a live dog in this fight. Next up, we have a featherweight bout between Darren Elkins and Tristan Conley. Elkins is probably one of the toughest, most gritty fighters in the sport of MMA. Anybody who has damage tattooed across their chest, is somebody that you should probably avoid. And, he's looking to get back in the win column. He did have that knockout loss to Cub Swanson back in December. And, is potentially fighting for his job this weekend in that he's 2-5 out of his last 7 fights in the UFC. And could be cut if he loses his fight against Conley on Saturday. Tristan Conley, on the other hand, made a name for himself when he took that short notice fight a couple of years ago, went up 2 weight classes and beat Michael Pereira. He kind of got on everybody's radar after that fight, got everybody's respect. He hasn't been very active over the last few years. I think he's had some injuries. And did have a loss, or lost his last fight, I should say, to Pat Sabatini, which took place last year. So he's looking to get back in that win column as well. Looking at this bout, I think Darren Elkins has the clear wrestling advantage. He definitely has that UFC experience advantage as well, having been a veteran in the sport and a veteran in the UFC for so many years. Conley, I think, has the jiu-jitsu and submission advantage, and I think he's a little better on the feet as well. Is a better striker than Elkins. This is a close fight. This one could go either way, but I am going to go with Darren Elkins. I think that his overall UFC experience, his wrestling ability to get takedowns, dictate where the fight takes place, and ultimately control Conley on the ground is what's going to lead him to victory. Conley's got great submissions, a great jiu-jitsu game, but Darren Elkins has been submitted once in his entire MMA career, and I'm not confident that Conley's able to get a submission win. So unless Conley, that is, somehow keep this fight entirely on the feet and kind of outstrike Darren Elkins, that is one path to victory for him. But I see Elkins tying him up, getting those takedowns consistently, effectively using his pummeling, controlling Conley on the ground, avoiding those takedowns, and grinding out a victory. And the last fight we're going to review on today's show is between 2 veteran middleweights when Gerald Meerschaert takes on Krzysztof Jocko. Both of these guys have a combined 76 pro MMA fights. Jocko, a very well-rounded fighter, not necessarily great anywhere, but good everywhere. He fights very disciplined and consistently, which is why he's 23-5. Typically will outpoint his opponents and win by decision. Not necessarily the most exciting fighter out there. And then you got Gerald Meerschaert, who is a submission ace. This guy has 26 career wins coming by submission. Is also a pretty well-rounded fighter, but definitely a jiu-jitsu specialist. And, looking at this fight, I do lean towards Jocko. I am going to pick him to get the win this weekend. But I wouldn't be surprised if Gerald gets the submission victory. He has been known to be a spoiler in the past. He beat, I believe the guy's name was Muradov last year when he was a plus 440 underdog. So he's used to that underdog role, and he's often played spoiler in that underdog role. So he could very well get the submission victory this weekend. That being said, though, when I look at the statistics, Jocko has only been submitted once in his entire MMA career. So, I can't bank on the fact that Jared Mearshardt's going to get a submission win against somebody who's only lost by submission once. So we're going to go with Jocko. And that's it for today's show, guys. And that is it for this episode of the Unofficial Pre Fight Show. Enjoy the fights this weekend. We'll see you next week.